Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan McGuire, I'm Manager of Professional Development at ACCE, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's webinar, the first one of our fall season. Today we're going to hear from Sherry Pash, who's founder of Strategic Solutions for Growth. In this 45-minute webinar, we will touch on the key elements of the R's of membership: recruitment and retention, revenue, relationships, relevance, research, and recognition. Before I turn the program over to Sherry, we do have a few housekeeping notes. First, attendees are in listen-only mode during the webinar to avoid background noise. Second, the webinar is scheduled for 45 minutes, including time for questions. So after Sherry's presentation, she will take your questions, which you can ask by using the question function of the webinar. The question box is on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question, and I'll read the question to Sherry at the end of her presentation. If we run out of time and don't get to your question, or if you have a question that you'd prefer to discuss with Sherry offline, please feel free to contact her directly. Her contact information will be included on the last presentation slide. And if the question is for anyone here at ACCE, we can get in touch with you, or if you've typed your question in and we just don't get to it, I'll forward it on to Sherry, so no worries about that. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, and it should be up on the ACCE website on the ACCE University webinar page within the next 1 to 2 business days. So I take a look for it on Monday, the 12th. I'll also post the presentation slides along with the webinar recording. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker today. Sherry Pash is changing the culture and the way organizations approach membership recruitment and retention. She provides a customized multi-step recruitment and retention program with proven success in net new member growth. In addition to membership work, Sherry conducts board of director orientations as well as planning sessions. She's an active conference presenter for many associations, including, of course, ACCE, also the National Home Builders Association, the Institute for Organization Management, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce Executives, and many state associations across the country. Prior to starting Strategic Solutions for Growth in 2010, Sherry built her career at Michigan State University, the Kellogg Center, managing and working with the association market for over 20 years. Following her career with MSU, she was appointed Vice President of Sales for the Greater Lansing Convention and Visitors Bureau. So thank you, Sherry, very much for being here today, and please take it away.
All right. Thanks, Susan. Hello, everybody. Welcome first. I know there's quite a few names on the list that I saw that have been to my sessions in the past through ACCE or their state professional association. A number of clients I see on there as well. So welcome, and welcome to all of you I've not met in the past as well. We'll look forward to kicking right in here. Really, I'm going to pack a lot into these 35 minutes that we have before we take questions. And I hope you find some refreshers, maybe a new idea or concept to build on. But know that we're going to just spend a few minutes on each R. Truly, each R could be its own seminar or own session, and often it is. So we're going to just touch on a lot of different topics through this and see, again, where you have questions as well as we go through it. So let's kick in and get started. So as we look at first slide, okay, so the R's of membership, recruitment and retention, we're going to talk a little bit about how to stay strategic with this. Revenue, there's going to be goals and growth. Relationships, very important. That's the foundation of what you do. Members, connectivity, the importance of relationships. We're going to talk about the relevance with a little bit of value proposition. Kind of research, targeting the right prospects. So we're spending our recruitment time on relevant new members. We're going to look at recognition, the members, volunteers, leaders. How do we make sure to recognize them and get them the exposure they're looking for? And I kind of threw another one in if we get time, results, because that's really an important R, and measurements and accountabilities for where we're going. But as you can see, just those R's alone, that's a lot of information. So we'll tackle what we can. I'll try to talk slow so we can get, so you can hear me, and then also but try to get through this as quick as we can so we can cover as much as we can, okay? So if we look at this The first one, recruitment and retention, being strategic. And many of you have heard me reference Simon Sinek, the gentleman down in the corner here. And he has some nice YouTube videos, a book that you can read, but I like the 10 or 15 minute YouTubes or even TED Talks he does. And really starting with the why. So before you can be really strategic in your recruitment, really understanding the why. You know what, that outer circle in that picture you see. The what is the chamber. How can they invest with you? But why? Why does a member, small business, large community supporter, why do they need to invest? So making sure you really understand your whys is very important as we start to be more strategic in our recruitment. The DNA. Make sure you understand what's the DNA of a great member for you. When you think about what makes up, so that DNA, the makeup of something, what makes up a good member for you, a really great member? So what we want to make sure is that we're spending our recruitment time on the DNA that makes a great member and not, on those that really are going to churn out after a year. So it's really important to understand your DNA of a great member and also within that DNA to prioritize. So if you think about, in this, a couple ways you prioritize. Some people do the hot and cold, which is very important. Is it a hot lead? Is it a cool lead? They're not going to be joining this year. But I also really stress, and those who've seen my sessions will know, to prioritize with an ABC category, making sure that as you are reaching that quality, think of the ABC as more of a quality prioritization, so that you're thinking those members that maybe really, the A might be the strong potential for retention, that high investor, could be a sponsor for you, kind of adds that influence, they're a community leader, those A's that we all have in our communities. And then remembering the B, that good retention, they often are engaged, often business to business. And then those C's that kind of churn out, sometimes it's business to consumer. So prioritize your targets, but remembering at the same time that every community is just a little bit different. Like if you have a cash card or a gift card program in your community, you need those business to consumers and such. So that's a whole session we could go into, but just be sure to prioritize the targets and the prospects that you're working with, and that keeps you very strategic so that you are bringing new members in that will naturally grow your retention because you've brought those members in that need and want to be a part of the chamber. So that the DNA and the priority is very important, as well as don't forget part of being very strategic is that recruitment sales process. And that, this slide right here is a full session. It's an hour or two, so I feel like I'm just touching on really quick parts with it. But that recruitment sales process, the part I would speak of on that is to make sure that we're really learning and qualifying and have really relevant conversations with our prospects, so that when you are talking with the prospect that fits the DNA you wanted, perhaps it's the AB level, and are you having those conversations about, if they're looking to grow their business, who is their perfect customer? What does that perfect client look like? So you can start to see where they're hanging out in your chamber. So that full recruitment process, are you qualifying and really learning what's important to that member, sharing and matching the benefits that the chamber offers as solutions to challenges in their business, managing the objections, a key piece of that recruitment sales process. So making sure that we're managing those objections. And then one of the most important pieces of that sales process is remembering that we have to actually ask for that investment. Sometimes people leave it hanging there, but you want to really ask for that new investment, that new membership. And quite often I change the term from joining to investing, because so many people think, oh, I don't need to join another organization, or what are you going to do if I join? Where investment kind of changes that, even for your basic business membership, that's still an investment in their business, it's an investment in the business community. So thinking of joining as an investment changes that just a little bit. So being strategic in your recruitment and retention, hopefully some little reminders in there, that why, making sure you're prioritizing and you're targeting prospects that are going to give you that natural retention growth. So that's a really important piece of starting to have a really relevant recruitment process in place. Okay. The next R might fall into your revenue. We all, all have those revenue goals, and we want to make sure that we're looking at growth within that. So if you think about like the short and long-term goals there, the long-term goal might be that kind of how many new members or how much membership revenue do we want over the next 1 to 3 years. But don't forget to break that. If we need 300 new members this year or 200 new members based on the size you are, that can vary. Make sure to give yourself short-term goals. Break that down to a monthly goal, because if you look at that full number, sometimes it can be daunting, but more importantly, you can get through the first few months of the year not really focusing on it because you have all year to get that, and you're setting yourself up for having to do a lot of catch-up mid-year, maybe right about this time even, and to get to that end number. So if you have a yearly number or budget goal you're working towards, really break that down into short-term goals for you. You might say right now, we have a lot of that C-level membership that we're going after, that business that comes in insurance. Your short-term goal, if you need numbers, you need financial, you need investment, you may have to go after some of that very short-term and stretching longer term over the next 6 months, how you transition into a much more strategic approach and be getting those numbers that are going to add value to the membership. So it really depends where your chamber's sitting right now, what those short and long-term goals look like. Another thing to make sure to look into is making sure you have activity and production goals, no matter the size of your chamber. If you're a 1 or 2 person chamber, or if you're a 10 or 20 person staff chamber, activity and production, we're human, so human nature is we need goals to achieve. So giving yourself how many contacts for recruitment, how many calls, emails, outside visits, what's your activity goal, and then the actuals for each week. Are you meeting that? And again, if you're a 1 or 2 person office, it might be very small, but if you're a larger chamber and you're full-time membership, you'll have very large production numbers. So making sure to really take a look at that and give yourself those activity and production goals as well as outcomes. Revenue, very important, of course. Really looking at the revenue that's coming in for new membership, looking at upgrades if you have the tiers or those abilities to upgrade people, making sure you have goals for both of those, and then making sure just as important are the membership numbers. I always say you can't put new members in the bank, you've got to put the revenue in the bank. So you've got to have both goals so that you have the value of a large number of members, but more importantly, you have the revenue to make an impact in your community. So goals is a very important piece for being very strategic in your recruitment and membership growth. So we look at this, relationships. This is another piece that's one, very natural for chambers to be very relational, but sometimes we forget that we have a lot of transactions that happen in the chamber world. So think about, when you're talking with a member, I'm calling to talk about renewing your membership, or moving down here into the relational, I'm calling to talk about how we might remain a part of your business strategy this next year. I'm calling to talk to you about sponsorship. I'm calling to talk about exposure to the targeted market that you shared would mean a difference to your business growth. When you think about those statements, you can see one's very transactional, the other is about the member, it's about what is going to be important to them. And when you think about voicemails you leave or emails that you send, are they transactional or are they relational? Is it about what you need and want, or is it about what the member's needing and wanting? And so when you think about that, maybe even listing out what are all the transactions that happen at your chamber, and think about how do you approach those. What are the voicemails you leave? What are the emails you send? What are the conversations? And can you make a list of the transactions, how you state them, and then maybe moving into how do we say this a little bit more relational, relationship, and kind of that with them, what's in it for the member? How do we make it about them? So, and then with connectivity, we have to be very intentional to help our members connect with each other. That's a big part of what they're looking for, is that connectivity. And then really talking about building relationships with those you don't see, that you might not get to talk to. How do you use social media and bring the social media element into building those relationships with LinkedIn, with Facebook? I know there's many more, the Instagram and such, but how are you building relationship with members and helping them to connect with each other? And there's so many different ways to do that, but it's important to set a plan together. Ambassadors play a role in some of that. But with this particular slide and topic, I think what I like to talk most about is that transactional to that relational, because it's such an impact, and it can make such a difference in the conversation. So that's, I hope, what you can take from this particular slide is thinking about your chamber and how you all interact with your members. Okay. The other thing would be thinking about relevance and that value proposition. You know, that heart of what you do is that value. What are you bringing to the member? So, you know, just as it says here, members don't buy that membership. They're really investing in those experiences. They're looking to see what's in it for them in many cases. Your larger members, certainly we know it's different experiences, more the advocacy, the community impact, but your medium and small businesses may be looking for that true outcome of new business connections that are turning into customers and such. So you really want to think about when you need to think about your value proposition, you know, they're looking at what am I getting versus the cost and the investment I made. So that's where you want to see where are your gaps in value proposition. So for example, if you're talking about a smaller business and they've really invested with you because they're looking for exposure, what does that look like for them? That's the value that they're looking for. So you say, okay, someone's looking for exposure with their membership. We all talk about the SWOT in our big picture, big marketing things that we do, which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So think about exposure. Talk about what strengths of the chamber gaining exposure for your members. What are the strengths of your networking? What are the weaknesses? Are people not able to get to them? You know, going through a real SWOT, what are the opportunities that you have to help businesses gain more exposure? And what's threatening that exposure piece? You could do that same thing for advocacy, those larger companies that are joining for that community impact or advocacy, taking any part of your membership and your benefits and running it through that mini SWOT. This is a full session I do. In fact, I'm doing one next week actually in Canada. We'll be doing a 1 hour breakout session, or it could be a general session, don't remember, but anyway. So the value prop is a fantastic exercise, hands-on. We did it in Florida not too long ago, and it really is a good exercise to do with your ambassadors, with your staff. If you're a small chamber and you don't have the staff, just with those, your volunteers can really make a difference with looking at your values and your benefits that you're offering and just run them through that SWOT every so often. Do it in a staff meeting, do it in a monthly board meeting, but make it just a part of a daily quick exercise, not a major part of strategic planning. I mean, it's key for that, obviously, but bring it into the day-to-day operation. So that's the part with value proposition that I think can really help you start to see where are your gaps in these different areas. So researching, this is a key piece. We want to target the right prospects before we use that sales process that we just briefly touched on. But we want to make sure we're looking for the right targets and the right A's and B's. We're looking for those A-B members more or prospects. So, and the more we know about people before we make that initial call, the better. But I always say with research, be careful we don't go into analysis paralysis, that we analyze so long and we want to know everything about them that we never get to making calls. And that can be kind of easy to do for some people. So we want to make sure that we really just check our facts and know who we're calling, but we don't go into too deep of analysis. So a couple of sources, I'm not sure if you use, some people do use them, I know already, but is Reference USA. This is a tool that you can access through your library. And I'm going to flip here real quick just to show you kind of what it looks like. Reference USA. And it's a really big tool that the library has. And it will tell you all the companies and businesses in your area. And there are so many columns on that tool that I have a client right now that we're working on this, and they're cleaning up all the columns so we can get it to where we need to work. So you might need it, the employee count, the industry that they're in, perhaps how long they've been in business. So you start to, revenues. So you can decide out of that list who are your A-B prospects. So Reference USA is a fantastic tool to do some research through and to really gather some relevant A-Bs for yourself. Hoover's as well. Reference USA is free as long as you have a library card, and you can sit right at your desk and go online to your library and access that. And Hoovers.com, as many are familiar with that, but there's a small cost to that, I believe, in using that tool. But again, a great tool, works very similar, and you can probably even get deeper revenue information and things like that. So that's an important piece. The LinkedIn, I'm a huge user of LinkedIn. It's a training I do all over the country, but LinkedIn is a great tool for building rapport, learning about your prospects, how long they've been at the company, are they newer to the company where you can be a real resource to them, or is this somebody who's been at their company so they have influence and decision-making power? Very important to know who you're calling. It really takes away the cold call when you use some of those tools like LinkedIn. Also looking for those shared connections. Who do you know that already knows this person that you're targeting, and you can now go in with a warm, hopefully a warm referral as you talk to that prospect. And then with the research also, what do you research before the call? You might look at things like, are they a financially strong company? How many offices do they have? You know, who's on the leadership team? What do you know about the leadership team at that company? Are they already involved in the community? Or what are the causes that they support? You know, how long have they been in business? Company news, are they a growing company? Just all that is, again, not analysis paralysis, but enough to give you, yes, this is an A or B prospect for me, and this is where we're going to spend our time recruiting, so that research is really paying off for you, and you're starting to be much more relevant in your outreach. Okay, so again, that's your Reference USA. Libraries most often all carry it, but if they don't, talk to your library and tell them to come check it out. So, okay, so the other one that I had talked about was going into the results and really looking at kind of the measurements and accountabilities. And this is a really, you've done all this work to recruit, to get the right targets and to find those relevant prospects. We want to really look at how we measure and how do we hold kind of ourselves and our teams accountable for some good outcomes with our recruitment efforts. So we mentioned earlier the goal of production. Really, what do you need and what does a week look like that has good production for your size team, and what does that look like that brings you good outcomes? If you make 60 outreach calls, if you're a full-time membership person, do you see good outcomes from that? And are they relevant people that you're calling on? Are you calling on ABs, or are you calling on the majority of Cs? So really looking at your goals and your actuals for your outcome with the calls. Recruitment activity, again, how much outside visiting do you do as a chamber? Again, your chamber size will make a difference with this, but if you're a really small chamber, again, can ambassadors play in this? Again, if you block a little bit of time on your calendar, if we don't time block our recruitment activity onto our calendar, it often is what gets pushed aside because it's not quite as on fire as that urgent matter right there. The hard part is at the end of the month, at the end of the year, it does become very urgent if we haven't met the recruitment and new member goals that we had. So the best way to make sure that recruitment activity happens is to get that scheduled right onto your calendar and putting in an alarm and making sure you have a plan for that recruitment activity. And then you can start to see your actuals and your outcomes from that work you've done. Making sure you've got in your measurables intake information from that conversation with that prospect. Have you gathered the very critical information about their business, and not just, hey, how's business going? They're going to say, hey, it's going fine. I was doing a member program for a chamber where we have about 50 members, and I do a sales session for about 3 hours, and halfway through we took a break. And the receptionist came in and asked me, well, how is everything? I said, oh, it's fine, thank you. And then she said, well, how is the temperature in the room? I said, oh, it's very hot. And yet I laughed because I had just told her everything was fine. So, I know that's important to ask specific questions, but that really drove that point home. We asked somebody how their business is doing. Hey, how's business? Oh, great. But when you ask specific questions, that can get you more specific answers and things that will help you. You know, are they pleased with their website presence? You know, think about the benefits you have. Be sure to be asking questions that allow you to solve some of the things with the benefits that you offer, if that makes sense. So really thinking about one intake question we've started to add to and I think I've got Shannon from Myrtle Beach on here. We in their session is where we added this question was, what is the fiscal year you run on? What a great piece of knowledge for you to have, because now you know when to put that into calls for sponsors, for advertising. You don't hit them right after their budget year started. So knowing what fiscal year you run on is that kind of intake information I'm talking about. That gives you things that are measurable, that you can work with. So really being very intentional on your intake information is important. Your results, looking at your new members and your revenue. Every month having that goal and looking to see, did we meet that revenue and that new member number that we needed, and did we need it just by filling it with that member that's going to come and churn in, or come in and churn out, or did we get relevant new prospects and members into our pipeline? And that's a whole other thing, having that pipeline activity. That's the session I just did at ACCE in Savannah, was a pipeline session on how do you really grow your pipeline. So again, the results, the measurements, the accountabilities are all really important pieces, and that pace. I know a lot of you look at pace probably, with budget things, but looking at that same thing. If you are ahead or behind of new members where you were at this time last year, you want to be able to look also then to see, am I ahead or behind on the number of calls, recruitment calls I was making? If I'm way ahead and our numbers are up, that makes sense. But if I'm way ahead and our numbers are down, we want to be able to look, why are we not pacing where we were last year for new members and such? So a lot of different types of production reports and tools, but kind of getting some of those created so that you have just at least some data to make strategic decisions with. And so having some measurables and some accountability to those is very important as well. Okay, so I'm at the end here, but I think I'm going to go one more slide because we're really just about 2:30. So I'm going to kick real quick and come back to my last slide. And then if you have questions, hopefully you're typing those in there, because again, I'm keeping it fairly general. I've got so many different types of chambers on here. I'm hoping I'm giving you just little tidbits that you can kind of think about and maybe take and adapt to your particular chambers. So one R that I've added just recently was the resources. Thinking about staff and interns and technology. Are we intentional with our engagement? And really thinking about, how does the staff play into that? How do interns play into that? We really want to make sure that these tools, like the staff that you have, that's a resource that you can truly promote as a benefit, because your staff is there as a community resource to your prospects, to your members. So it's maybe thinking about from that angle, do we think about our resources as actual member benefits and such? So that's a piece I like to mention there. Interns, if you don't have an intern program for your membership team, or if you don't even have a membership team because you're so small of a chamber, look at interns from any higher education near you, community colleges, business schools, universities, colleges. I've put together a lot of different intern programs. I've worked with interns always. I have one in my small business right now. So how do you use interns? But interview for the right intern, have them do some of that research that we talked about so they can hand you a qualified list of prospects at the end of each week for the next week to work on. So really making sure that you're using your resources of staff is a real benefit, interns, and going back to staff, if that's a big issue, you can't be all you can be to your community because you don't have enough staff. How do you put those proposals together to truly show the value of additional staff? The other one is the technology. The member software is such an important piece within the whole recruitment and retention process. Some of you may use Chambermaster, WebLink, SBA, Your Membership. There's a number of them out there. I can't say enough about really having your entire team, chamber team, using the software that you've already invested in, and really document in there member touches, the information that you learn about members. That's your communication tool. That's your relationship tool, and that's your follow-up tool. If you're not using your reminder sections and your to-do list each day, huge opportunities with your software to keep you more efficient. And but the full team using it makes you very transparent in communication. They see if they talk to just somebody in your, maybe in your billing area and had a concern. When your membership staff is getting ready now to call and do kind of an engagement conversation, they can see right away that they just talked to somebody 2 weeks ago and had a challenge, where if you're not using your software to communicate that internally, your membership person calls, here they're talking, and not even acknowledging this person just had a problem last week with billing or something. So member software is a huge resource that can impact recruitment and really impacts retention and engagement. So making sure you're maximizing your member software, making sure that you have the custom fields in there that will allow you to truly track the data and the information that you need to grow your engagement with that particular member. So things that, as an example, I would put in there is, if you are going to go with that concept of an ABC prospect, get that right into your software, add a custom field so you can run my A prospects, my B prospects, and my C prospects, and make sure that you're spending the amount of time you want in each of those areas. Or if you run that list and you see you have all C prospects, it keeps you very intentional on moving to gaining more A and B prospects and such. So again, those are some resources that are very important, that can make a big difference. And then real quick, before we go to questions, because I think now is probably about the time we need to do that, looking at the recognition piece. This is a big part of why some of your members get engaged, is they are looking for that exposure. And a couple of clients I've worked with have gone through this process of creating badges. So if you have, say, an ambassador, do the ambassadors receive, maybe you create with your logo, and create a special logo for an ambassador, not changing your logo, but a badge they can put onto their social media, that they can put onto their website that says, kind of like Chamber Ambassador. So a lot of times we give them the logo, the electronic logo for the chamber, which if you're not, you really need to be doing, so that they can get that electronic logo onto their social media, onto their website, into their email signatures. So creating badges for those volunteers. I'm on the board of directors, it's a badge for that. So that's one way, some recognition. The social media, are you using that to really thank and recognize some of your members? That's an important piece, so that the whole community kind of sometimes sees as overall thing, hey, thank you to our ambassadors this month. Awesome team doing good work for us, and you list their name and company. So just making sure you're using the things that really can make a difference for them, okay? And just knowing your members' motivation too. What is recognition to them, or what is motivating that volunteer or that leader to be involved? But important to be consistent and timely. Recognizing someone immediately for a job well done, or a major maybe a fundraising activity they did or something, but consistent and timely and being very intentional. Make it a true personal recognition from you, a thank you. That's one thing I think chamber people do, is we are very intentional on that already. But if you're not, and it's a busy day, busy week, I know every day is busy, how do we build that into a process? How can you help call on other people to help you with that process? A couple, just from Wild Apricot Volunteer Appreciation Guide, a couple things, just little reminders there, so I'll include that one too, just making sure that that's a piece that you can build in. So, whoops, sorry guys, I just went to the end there. So looking at this questions now, Susan, do we have some questions? I'm going to go to my
yeah, thanks, Sherry. We do have some questions, and if everyone, if you haven't had a chance, if you have a question and you'd like to ask it now, please go ahead and type it into the question box. I have a few to start out with, and we'll just go through as many as we can. One question is, do you recommend providing different incentives to the sales team to ensure that they spend their time with a priority target? For example, do you not commission out the ones that they shouldn't be spending their time on?
That's a great question, and it's one I'm working on with so many clients right now. It's a really hot topic. And yes, I always say that the commission, the bonuses should be based on the behaviors and outcomes that you're looking for. So you might have a small flat amount someone can earn if they sign or that they bring in a new member that's a ski level, but they get a much larger commission or bonus based on your AB members, and really defining internally for you, for your community, what's an A, what's a B, what's a C. And remember, that could have gray in there too. Somebody who looks like a C, but they're family owned, they've been a part of the community for 30 years, might be an A or B. So being sure to really, there's some gray, so you have to be a little bit, you have to really define that for your own organization. But definitely looking at commissioning and bonusing on what the outcomes are you want. I'm a very strong proponent of that. That can really help drive the activity, and it's motivating for the salesperson to know, if I do this, this is going to make a bigger difference for our chamber, and it makes a bigger difference for their income as well. So definitely.
Okay. A recent discussion for chambers on LinkedIn asked, which is more important, recruitment or retention? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think you could say which one's more important, but to me, if you are recruiting the right members, your retention is naturally going to grow. So it depends where your chamber's sitting. If you're sitting where your market penetration is very low and you have a large amount of companies and businesses out there that could become members, you might need to focus on recruitment heavily for a year or two, really bring in 300-400 members through that relational process, and then you can focus on retention. I have a couple clients that for the last couple of years have brought in really strong numbers, so they're now slowing up a little bit and they're going more towards the retention to hang on to what they have because they've made such an impact. But if we keep bringing the C-level members in, they're going to churn right back out, and you're going to have to aggressively be recruiting all the time because they're coming in and going out. So the key is getting a strong membership of ABs, and you always have Cs in there still, but to hang on to the majority and to increase your retention rate, you definitely want to do that. But if you've already impacted a lot of your community, you have a good market penetration, then retention is important. And I almost call it engagement more than retention anymore, because how do you engage? And I just did a session this summer in Indiana for their Chamber of Professionals on engaging the disengaged member, the new session I've just done. And it's, what does engagement mean nowadays? How do people want to engage? Coming to events may not even mean engagement to somebody, and they're doing something else that they consider themselves engaged with. So, yeah, so I don't know if that really, it probably didn't answer it real clearly, because I don't think you can say one's more important than the other, because it depends where your chamber's at and what your makeup of members is right now. But I hope that helped a little bit.
Okay. You talked a little bit about member management software, I believe, and there was a question, is there a simple, inexpensive CRM that many chambers use, or that I guess that you would recommend, or maybe how would you go about figuring that out?
Yeah, and if you're a really small chamber, 1 or 2 person, and you just do not have a budget to even think about getting the really great member software that's out there, you just need a CRM system. I run my small business off from Zoho.com, ZOHO.com, and it's a great, robust system. But I do recommend, if you at all possible, to really jump in with a chamber master. And I can't, I just go with what my clients are working on. A lot of them use chamber master, but then there's a good share that use WebLink and love WebLink too. Those are the 2 I would say, honestly, I hear the most about. I do know yourmembership.com is coming up in play a little bit, but I think it's really chamber master and WebLink. And it's really with what you've got, the staff you have, what you're really looking for yours to do. But you can't really go wrong with either of those. But I will just, honestly, myself, I use Chamber Master with my clients more, because I don't know, that just seems to be what the system I've been exposed to more. So, but really key systems to have something. If you can't afford a full membership system that does your financials, your events, your website, and those are the way to go, definitely. But if you just don't have it in your budget, look at least at the CRM that allows you to truly be strategic and relevant. And that's, email me questions. If you're a really small chamber and you don't have something, that's the kind of thing we could chat on the side about real quick, okay?
Okay. What happens when someone declines? How soon do you go back and ask again? or how long do you wait?
And that's a very good question. I would ask the question, what was the process we went through with that particular business? Have we truly had those relevant conversations about what is their business goals this year? What are their challenges? Asking about when they are looking for new customers, who's their best customer. And I'm thinking this maybe is more small and medium business. So you've got to know that you really did a very solid recruitment process, that you managed all the objections, you knew what their objections were, you overcame them. Because if you didn't overcome their objections and use some test closing in there, then you probably have some things hanging that are maybe going to prevent you from closing ever with that new member, because there's things that you don't realize are challenges to them still in their investment with the chamber. So it has to do with that full sales process. And if you know you've done just a stellar job, everything was great, and they didn't join, that's the bigger question: why didn't they join and invest? And is it something that you can overcome? Because to just start the whole process over again without overcoming the challenge that had them, not joining, there's really no point in going after them again until you understand what that really is, if that makes sense. And make sure, were they a C or were they an AB for your particular chamber? If they're a C, don't keep chasing after them. Start with the ABs and then have really strategic conversations and figure out why they're not investing if they're not, when you're done with your process in relationship building. Does that make sense, hopefully?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Here's another question. Can you offer suggestions for recruiting a successful business that, quote, just doesn't need the chamber, unquote?
Yes, and quite often they'll say, I don't need the chamber because I'm already so busy. I got all the customers and clients I need. We're thriving. And sometimes you can turn that around and say, it's fantastic that your business has developed and grown into a real business leader in our community. It'd be fantastic to see you come into the chamber and help other businesses see that same success, or simply to be an investor with the chamber so that we can continue to keep a healthy business climate, which helps us bring more residents into the area that will then continue to use your business or your services, or will help make it easier for you to recruit better talent if this is a large company. So lots of reasons why that's great business is so good for you. We want to recognize you as a leader in our community and kind of go in that kind of stroke the ego area a little bit. So really, again, taking that through that way. They may not need you, but they do need a healthy business community and a healthy residential community, most likely.
Okay. Sherry, I believe you mentioned someone on your first slide and his book, but
yes,
this one of our participants didn't catch the name. Could you say his name again, please, and maybe spell it?
I can. Yes, Simon Sinek. Yes, S-I-N-E-K, Simon Sinek, and it's start with the Y.
Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, start with the Y. Okay, great. Are there any certain commission or bonus strategies that you would suggest or have seen work well for a chamber creating a specific membership sales position?
That one, I'm going to have somebody email me direct probably on that. It's such a big question. And it's just funny because the last 2 months I have spent so much time on that, and there's just not one formula that's working for every chamber or I have some other state associations I'm doing that same thing with right now. And it's just every organization is just a little bit different with their budget, what their culture is, what their needs are. So some will do a commission. Some, and the commission is good. Some will just do, if you meet your numbers, you get a quarterly bonus based on that number. So it really varies. And then the retention versus the new member, again, it depends. What do you need to drive right now? New members, do you really need to grow your base of members, or do you want to really focus on increasing your retention? You're going to put different bonus and commission on those types of areas too. So I wish I could say this formula works really great, but it's one of those that you almost have to talk through a little bit for each situation.
Okay, Sherry, I'll send you that one, and there will probably be some others too that I don't get to. I'll send you that question, and you can chat with this attendee and others offline.
Great.
How do you feel about membership campaigns? Are they effective and worth the time invested in them?
Oh, myself personally, because I'm such a relationship sales type person, I'm not a fan of them because I believe it brings in a lot of those C-level members. There's a time and a place for them. Basically, if you need to bring money in quick, you need to do a fundraising type campaign, then that's the thing to do. But can you try to give it more direction where it's AB members and such? But so many of my clients have had the campaigns, and now we're working to recover from them and to really figure out how do we build relevant members that have that relationship, that are that AB level, and they're joining for the right reasons. They're not being kind of strong-armed or peer pressured into joining and investing. They're investing because they've determined it's the right thing for their business. So I myself am not a big fan of them, but again, like I said, there is a time and place that they can serve a real purpose. If financially you need some fast revenue coming in, that's a good way to do it.
Okay, so we're a little past the time, but we'll do one more question, and thank you all for the amazing and really thoughtful questions. I will be sure to get each and every one of them to Sherry, and so you will get your questions answered, or if they're to me, I will respond directly. So let's end with one final question. We are working to increase volunteer engagement. Do you have suggestions as to how to create a referral culture?
Oh, for like to have them referring referrals as far as members or prospects?
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Okay. One, I would really help them understand what a referral is. I have an ambassador training I do with ambassadors around when I'm working with chambers, and that's one of the things we talk about is that just a name and a company, you can get that from a directory. A referral is truly if they've had a conversation with them. So helping them really understand what it means to one, how do they talk with a prospect themselves to get that interest and to know that this is a good prospect. This is the type of the DNA members that we're looking for. Help them understand what makes a really great member. And so I think a lot of it comes back to just bringing them into that there's a real recruitment process. They're busy in their days. Can you let them, I have a number that, in back when I was doing this, that we would say, okay, out of the list of new or prospects we're working on, or new members, so they can help with both sides, but who do they want to work with? Okay, if this industry is good for them, then let's have them get referrals from this industry, because it's kind of opening the door. If they can say that they're part of the chamber, they're making contact with them for this, they can start the relationship with the angle of the chamber. And yeah, I know that's a slippery slope right there. We want to make sure that they're not saying they're with the chamber and then selling their own product, but you're giving them the ability to open that door, perhaps, and then build a relationship with somebody. So, but again, that's a big topic. But how to get volunteers to have the time? One, looking at people who are good salespeople themselves for their product or service, and they understand how to kind of build new relationships and build prospects. It's important that you have the right people in those volunteer positions, just like you would a staff position, and watching for the right volunteers to come in. And then having a solid plan for them, so there's expectations, because they're so busy, they need to know quickly and succinctly, what do you need done? And a lot of success is coming from taking your ambassador group and breaking it into 3 groups. Those that want to help with recruitment, those who want to help with retention, and those who only want to do events. And then you're looking at the strengths of each volunteer, and you're not putting them into helping you with engagement and recruitment when that's not their strength, and they'd rather just be socializing at events and welcoming people. So it's really important to play on the strengths of the volunteers that you are recruiting. I hope that helps that question a bit.
Thank you, Sherry, so much. This is obviously such a rich area we could talk about for a long time.
I could do a session for you, Susan. At every hour we could do a whole session. But real quickly before you sign off, I just want to thank you. I want to thank everyone who stayed on for the call. And gosh, I'd love to see you at your state chamber professional executive conferences as well as ACCE. So let me know if there's a chance for me to come and see your organization in 2017. And in October, I will be presenting at the ACCE Events Conference in Louisville. We'll be doing sponsorship sales. So would love to see some of you there as well.
Yes, I was going to mention that as well. Sherry will be presenting on sponsorships at our events conference. It's October 13th to 14th in Louisville. Our early bird deadline for registration is September 14th. But we will have registrations, after that. But in any event, it's going to be a great conference, I think, and we're really looking forward to having Sherry there to talk about sponsorships. And just a final reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and I will post the recording and Sherry's slides, a hard copy of the slide or PDF copy of the slides, on our ACCE webinar page, and I estimate that will be there by Monday, the 12th. So take a look on our webinar page on Monday. You'll be able to hear and see the presentation, the recording, and also download the slides. So thanks again, Sherry, for your presentation. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for your participation and your interest in this topic. We'll end now, and wishing everyone a great afternoon. Bye-bye.